Yeah, I'm playing with tops. But there's a reason for that. Because today's lesson number 2 in Woodturning 150 is a series of exercises utilizing the skew chisel to make spin tops. So for instance, what we're going to do is we're going to make cuts that utilizes the V cut, which we've known. We've done a planing cut, but we're going to do some other cuts that you haven't seen yet. We're going to do a peel cut to reduce this diameter. We're going to do some facing cuts to clean this up here, and spend a lot of time doing beads. So what we're going to do is take a few pieces of junk wood, go to the lathe. We're going to allow you to use a second tool, and that will be the spindle roughing gouge. We start off with a block of wood that's square, and you might as well knock the corners off and get it round with your roughing gouge. But I encourage you and challenge you to do all the other steps with your skew chisel. The skew chisel will give you a lot of practice, and by the time we have made cuts like that, different sizes, we will have got a lot of practice. I suggest you find your favorite skew chisel, sharpen up really good, and do the whole exercise with one particular tool. I find that every skew chisel has its own characteristics, and I react with it differently. So do it all with one tool, perhaps take a second tool later on and do the same exercise again and see what the different feel is and how the cuts work differently with that second tool. So let's go to the lathe, grab a piece of wood, put it up on the machine, and start looking at more cuts with the skew chisel. See you at the lathe. Here we're at the lathe, ready to get going on our spin tops. I have 3 blocks of wood here. An unknown hardwood, a piece of oak, which is definitely a hardwood, and a smaller piece of maple, because I think it'd be kind of fun to make a small top also. So let's start off with the biggest piece. What I'm going to do is put it in a 4-jaw chuck. I'm going to just grab the corners. And while roughing this out, I'm going to bring the tailstock up just for a little additional safety. This is not the greatest hold, but while I'm working with my skew chisel, it'll be just fine. So that's nice and snug. Tool rest is roughly in place. Let's check everything out. Well, we're almost clear. We're clear. And I'm going to use my spindle roughing gouge first to bring this piece into round. Volume is turned all the way down, and we'll bring the speed up. And here we go. A little rattling, so I tighten up the tailstock a little bit more. Little slippage. I thought I had it tight. I do now. Okay, step 1's done. So let's grab this skew chisel. And I'm going to take the tailstock away because we don't need it anymore. I'll definitely lose the live center in here. Okay, so let's first of all clear off that end and square it up. And I'm going to do a peel cut. You notice what I've done, I've laid the tool flat on the tool rest with the toe aimed this direction. And what that's going to do is to allow us to be able to peel in this way from the surface into the center. And the purpose of this cut is simply to clear up and square up the end, which is a little bit wanky right now. So I'm going to just light cut. Let me stop before I get to the end. As you saw, I was rolling the tool along. This bevel is staying on the surface of the wood all the way in. So I started here. And as the wood got smaller, I had to move not just in, but I had to follow the shape of the wood in. So right now the tool is at this posture here. Finish the cut now. All the way into the center. Do one more just so you can see. I'm staying on the surface of the wood. Now, I'm going to also use the peel cut simply to reduce the size of this shaft. This is going to be the twisty end of the top. So I'm going to take a number of cuts along here simply to waste away wood, but it's going to look really rough, but it goes very fast. So here we go with a series of these, maybe up to about that area. Second round. And a third round. Much less pressure this time, because I'm approaching the rough shape I want. So that's going to be my tip. So let's come around and work on that just a little bit more. And I'm going to now go to the planing cut that we've done before. And I'm able to clean up that surface. And I'm using the heel of the tool so far. Now right here at the tip, got to be careful not to get caught and pull off the wrong direction. So I want to get in here really tight, so I'm going to turn the tool the other direction with the toe, not the heel leading. With that, I'm able to get in closer to that surface. Now I'm also rotating the tool slightly, and you see I'm beginning to pull a slight curve into this. A higher pitched sound tells me I'm getting small, so I'm going to take lighter cuts. Before it gets too small, I want to round this end over. So a beading cut. Now, caution. This tip doesn't need to get near there. Okay, create a little point. We have a shape now. Let's refine this a little bit more. Very light cuts. Let me show you a new cut. This is a facing cut. I'm going to stand the tool vertically. I'm going to go in like this. However, there has to be a clearance between the tool and the wood. If this whole edge touches, I'm in deep trouble. It'll spiral right back out. So although I'm not going to be this far over, I will have a clearance angle, maybe about a degree or two. It's a nice cleaning up cut. I'll cut cleanly along those fibers. This is end grain fibers, and you can see that wood is really clean. For oak, that's a tough cut. I've cut down a little bit into here, so now I'm going to go back and clean up the rest of the spindle. Back to my planing cut. I think I'll use the heel of the tool. Now I want to make sure that looks nice. I can actually take the tip put some interesting decorative marks on there. I'm going to break this edge so it's not too sharp, just a little bit. Now, the working end of the top is going to be no more than a V cut here. So it's going to go from here down, and I'm going to start about here and keep taking a little bit more off the right side. Now, I'm down to a place where the tool width is buried in there, so I'm going to take a little off the waist side, simply to give clearance. Now back over here, work on the good stuff. More on the waist side. Now, I'm going to take one more cut here. Well, maybe two. And a one pass here, and then I'm going to stop for a second. And before that gets too small and too narrow there, it's a good time to do a little bit of sanding. A little piece of 180 grit here. Pull the tool rest back. This will spin on the top as well as on the bottom, especially since it's got a nice point on it. But if it's too sharp, it won't work quite as well. So a little sand, round that off just a little bit. This has been surface treated, so I'll just a little light cut there, touch there. We'll come back and use some more of that later. So let's take this down some more. Little waist side cut. In doing deep V-cuts, if I go over too far, it won't cut. It just starts a new one. So I want to come over just about a 64th of an inch. And as I go down, what's happening is the waste wood on this side is just fracturing away. Now, same thing on this side. More waste wood. A lot of V-cut practice. Now I got room to get my tool in here. I'm getting kind of close to where it's going to end up. Let's work back towards the tip. One last final sanding before I part that off, so I can get down there a little farther. And what I'm going to do is put the skew in my left hand, hold the top with my right hand. My thumb here will help support this. And I'm going to continue that V-cut left-handed, taking very light V-cuts. On the top side, a little more clearance there. Very light and very slow. And it's starting to wobble a little bit, so I'm going to hang on. There we are. First top. So what did we do today so far? We did a peel cut to remove mass. We did a planing cut to work on the spindle. We did a little bit of a bead here on the end. And we spent a lot of time practicing the V-cut from both sides, recognizing that the width of the tool is going to limit how far down I can go. So here's that surface that's been V-cut, and it's pretty clean. For that piece of really old, dry oak, it was really tough cutting. I wouldn't recommend using that as a sample. So here's our first top. So let me take this piece of wood out, put another piece in, and let's do a top with a different shape. So now let's put the live center back in there again and use our skew chisel. Not my skew chisel, but my roughing gouge to bring this down to round. And we'll go for another piece. Okay, good. Now, one of the things I found in turning that last piece, I had some difficulty cutting down into that V groove because my tool was getting dull. So I'm going to go over to the grinder and sharpen up both of my skew chisels. And I'll be right back. Okay, new edges, both tools. New piece of wood. Lose our tailstock live center again. Now let's do the same thing we did before, and we're going to use our peel cut to bring the piece down to a shaft, and we're going to do a round end on it this time. Feel. Tool's going in and down. So just establish the length of the handle. Now I'm going to come in and take some more off. Still in and down. Because I'm leading with a long point, we end up with this kind of a dovetail shape there. Now I'm going to work on that just like we did last time. I'll bring the tool rest over a little bit further. I think I'll take it down some more. These times the cut are lighter each time. And you can see I've kind of squared the tool up a little bit to the shape of the top and taking out some of those rough grooves. Okay, now I can take it down some more this way. I think I will. And it's not okay down there, I understand. So let's come here and do a little planing cut. And this is to get the size right, the diameter right. Small diameter, starting to squeal. So light cuts. Very little pressure horizontally. Now, I got to get rid of that garbage, so I'm going to go back to my facing cut again. Tiny planing cuts, but now I'm back to the facing cut to clean that up. All the way to the spindle. Now when I come down this way, these little pieces will just fall off. Got a nice surface there. Now let's finish off the end of this thing. Another bead. But if I do it this way, just be cautious of that point running into the body. And how round do I want that? Right about there. As I get near the center, the wood's moving very slowly. Now I rolled the tool over and I'm using the long point because I could see better. When I'm here, the tool's between me and the wood. I can't see it as well, so I changed this direction so now the tool is not blocking my vision. So I'm going to go back and do another couple of planing cuts here, only to take care of any shape issues. This is not the nice little curve I wanted. And now that looks a little better. And we have to clean that up, so we'll face and cut down there. Okay, now I want to do the ball shape on this one. So it's going to need a lot of working room, so maybe down into that area there. So this is a bead. A lot of opportunity to practice. And I'm just working back up closer to the right-hand side. And I'm looking at what shape I want down here now more than anything else. So it's going to kind of finish over there, so I need a little bit more clearance. So let's do a V cut from this side. Purpose which is to get us clearance. That may be enough. Let's see. Back to my bead. That's not quite the shape I want, so I got to keep cutting a little bit more. Planing. Rolling over to the bead. Shape-wise, it looks pretty good. So I still have to get down in there a little more room. There's not enough working room. So a little bit more V-cut on the left side. Almost an end cut now. And let's V-cut from the right now, just simply to remove a little more mass down in here. Trying to figure out where I want to go. There we go. Now, back to my bead. Getting awful close. I don't like it quite that pointy. So I turned my tool faster as I came down, and that's looking pretty close to being right. We get rid of some of the junk wood in here. And I've gone to the long point. Again, it fits places where the heel doesn't. I'm going to stop, grab my sandpaper, a little touch here just for a second. Know I can take care of small problems with sandpaper, but not the big ones. A little bump in there I didn't like, so I'm working on that a little bit more with my 180. And that's pretty well gone. And now what we need to do is finish parting that off as best we can and try not to tear the fibers. So here we are, right hand holding the top, thumb supporting the tool, toe down, long point down. We're off. Now I got a little bit of torn fibers right at the very end. So it's easy enough to come in here, clean them off like this, and then go to my sandpaper, which has disappeared. Recovered from the ground. And I can clean that up this way. So there's a third model. That's using a bead, a plane facing cut, and some V-cuts in here to get some material out of the way. We'll test all these in a few minutes. Well, let's try one more. And for that, I'm going to do more than just change the wood. I'm going to change the chuck also. This chuck is fine for holding larger pieces, but what I want for this next one is something a little smaller, so I'm going to have to change to a different chuck jaw set. I'm simply changing to a chuck that has, in the parlance of this company, what they call #1 jaws. That's because I'm going to hold a smaller piece of wood and I can grab it better. Go down in here a little bit further than before. Tighten it. Both holes. Alright, so now we're going to do this piece. I'm going to plane this down with my skew chisel while I'm at it. Roughing out with a skew is fine for smaller pieces, but not so good for larger pieces. Smaller piece on faster RPM. Planing cut to smooth it up. Well, this is going to be a small one. I could do an end cut here to clean it up. Well, if I can get the tool started. Now, I'm going to do the same thing on the spindle. Let's go back to the classic top first. It's my peel cut. Dancing forward and in and down. A little longer. That's pretty good. Maybe just a bit more. Now I'm going to plane this smooth. And I'm going to use the toe so I can get down in here tighter. Maple, and it cuts sort of like butter. A couple of lumps in there I don't like. So now let's do the tip here. I'm going to use just a V-cut on this. Got to be very cautious that this and that do not interfere. Smaller skew might be the trick. Maybe something like this one. Where here I can use the heel without the risk of interfering. So I'll switch to a smaller skew. And a more delicate handle. And we've got a facing cut to clean that mess up down in there. That's pretty tiny. So let's go back to doing our V-cut. Staying with my smaller one here, just for fun. I went to the left side simply because I felt I was going to need more clearance. That cut was deep enough, it worked on the maple. It would not have worked on that oak. That would have been too wide of a cut, and I'd have pressed an awful lot and not made much progress. So very light cuts now because there's not much wood down there. Now let's square that corner off. Yeah, I'm scraping. Now back to my V-cut. And I know if they stand too tall, they don't spin well, so I want to make this flatter. And before I go too far, back to my disappearing sandpaper. Little sanding here. Little sanding there. Edges, faces. I'll try to keep this one closer. Now we're going to part off just like we did before. I can use either chisel. When I'm holding this, see how I hold this? Finger along the shaft, along my wrist. With the larger one, I can go farther up my arm and hold it further this way. That gives me a stiff piece there. My thumb helps guide it. Gives my hand free to hold on to the top of the spin top. Flattening it out more. Ooh, I'm almost there. Little working room. And we're off. So, here's another one. Just an itsy tiny one. But it was done with the same amount of ease as the bigger ones. So I tell you what, let's go back over to the board and see if any of these things actually spin. Well, that was a fun day. We have been making spin tops. That one wobbles just a little bit. That one spins very easily. And even our little one works. So, good, they work. That's important. So I hope today that you've gotten some opportunity to see the various kind of cuts that you can make with a skew chisel. And now the job is to go out in the shop, work with your lathe and some scrap wood and give it some practice. Go all the way through. Make yourself a challenge perhaps. And the challenge might be, I'm going to see how I can make them spin longer. In our classes we sometimes have contests at the end of the class where the students will make 2 or 3 different varieties and we'll have a contest to see whose top spins the longest. So maybe make a contest with yourself, see what you can do. Next lesson, When we come back, we're going to be dealing with a new type of turning between centers again, but turning on 3 axes, multi-axis turning. And what we'll end up doing is doing what we do is called turning the ghost image. So subscribe, practice, come back and see me for the next lesson. We'll see you soon.